Hey guys, it's Troy, and I am back with another video. This one is by request, however. I had a viewer request to do a review of the Jinhao 15. Now, 15 is the temperature that we've been experiencing here in North Carolina here recently. I tell you what, 29 years ago, I left New England and took a job offer in North Carolina because I wanted to get away from 15 degrees on a regular basis. Although I guess it's better than a friend of mine who's in Vermont that I went to college with, who said that they've had 0 or below for the past week. So anyway, we're expecting some winter weather here in North Carolina. We're an expected snowfall 2 to 3 inches. So around here they shut the place down. So my kids are in school. Before they get back from school, wanted to take an early lunch break and go ahead and do this review. So, the Jinhao 15. Like I said, this is a viewer requested video. And Jinhao. I'm going to give you my opinion of Jinhao pens. I know a lot of people are tuned out right now or won't even watch this video because of the word Jinhao. Oh, it's cheap Chinese garbage. Well, you know, some pens are better than others. Even within the Jinhao family, there are some pens that are better than others. I've got some Jinhaos that I go, eh. I've got some Jinhaos I went, not bad. I've got a couple that are, some of my favorites. No kidding. I've got pens that cost hundreds. I've got pens that cost hundreds of pennies. So, Jinhao. Is this one of my favorite Jinhao pens? Not necessarily, but I'm going to go over it. There's some things I really like about this pen, and there's some things I didn't like about it. So let's get into it. It's an all-metal pen. I got the one in blue, and quite honestly, they're a little harder to find than I thought they would be. I had to search for them, and there weren't many of them available on eBay. So I don't know if it's a discontinued model with Jinhao or what, but I do like the style of it. I like that it starts out kind of wide. It's got some curve, so it flares out as you get towards the end. I mean, I like curves. So it curves in a little bit. Then you run across this ribbed section here that's all metal, and that's actually where the cap meets the pen. Okay, so it's flat on the finial, flat on the finial here too. It's got an average clip. Is it a very functional clip? Well, let's take a look. It's not bad. I mean, it's an average clip. It's not too bad. All right, so it's got a little bit of spring to it. On this flared out bottom, it's kind of different, isn't it? It's all black with a little circle there, and that's where the thing will post. Does it post securely? Yep, it's not going anywhere. So, it's a cartridge converter style pen. Let's go ahead and open that up. I'll show you that. It came with a standard Jinhao converter. I gotta be honest, Jinhao converters are not that bad. The problem I have with them is even though they are international standard, they don't fit into all pens that take standard international converters. It's because of the shape and the length of the little nipple where it comes in and sits inside that section. So you got the metal threads here, metal threads there. They come together nicely. Little black section here, which is obviously tapered in even further after the step down. The only thing is it's a little short right here for that section. That section right there could be a little longer and be a little more comfortable. It's pretty back weighted with this cap, and so you gotta, in my opinion, write with it unposted because it's going to be a lot more comfortable. But the good news is it's actually long enough to be able to hold very nicely, very comfortably in the hand without even being posted. Here you've got a nib. Now the nib I'm going to show you is not the nib it came with. If you look, see how it's bent? That is a fude style nib. And it was a nib that was given to me by ChrisRap52. If you've seen his videos here on YouTube, then you know who I'm talking about. I'll get into that here in just a little bit. So What I found out is I had ordered a medium nib. I'm looking right here at the eBay listing. I got it pulled up. Jinhao 15 fountain pen blue, medium nib, new, free shipping, $4.58. $4.58. I thought was a little hefty for a Jinhao. I'm used to paying a couple of bucks, $2, $3 at the most. Usually $1 to $2 is the going rate for most Jinhaos, including shipping. So, all right, it was requested, so I'll go ahead and do it. I did not have a Model 15 in my possession at the time, so I ordered it specifically to do this review. When it showed up, it had a fine nib on it. It takes a standard number 5 nib, but it was a fine nib. I don't particularly care personally for fine nibs so much. I like medium, which is why I ordered the medium rather than anything with a fine nib on it. And the seller got the wrong nib. Not happy about that. So I figured, well, let's see how it wrote. Well, I can tell you how it wrote. Let me reach right over here, and in my book of writing samples, I will show you how that particular nib wrote. And I was very disappointed with the way the nib that it came with wrote. Right here, the Jinhao 15 fine, not particularly happy with how it was writing whatsoever. And it just seemed, it was not impressive. It was very thin, it was a little scratchy. I had that Noodler's Bernanke Blue in it, which I wanted to try a different ink. That's one I had a sample of, but had not tried the ink yet. And of course I've got some other pens that showed up about the same time. So I figured, you know, Chris sent me this nib for me to try out. And he suggested that I try it like a Jinhao 992. And I figured, well, we'll see. Because most of my 992s I've got laying around, I use for giveaway to try to get people interested in the fountain pen hobby. So I went ahead and put on that fude nib, figuring it's going to be one of my pens, it's going to be in my collection. So I gave it a shot. Well, the same writing, look the difference between this right here and this right there. Fude, F-U-D-E, which my understanding is a Chinese word that basically means like a paintbrush, like they would use to write their characters for their alphabet in Chinese. So it lays down a lot of ink. I was just doing some notes right here with it for some of the measurements that I took. You know, I mean, I like the pen and I like how it feels in the hand. It's 0.8 ounces, so it's got a little bit of heft to it. I like the fact that, you know, when it's capped, we're talking about 13.8 centimeters, and we're talking about 12.6 centimeters when it's uncapped, so it's a decent length. And looking at the widest point, it was 12.53 millimeters at the widest point. At the narrowest point down here, it was 10.68 millimeters. So it's got some nice dimensions to it, like I said. So, like I said, the fine nib, I took it out, put in that fude nib. There's not a whole lot else to say about it. It's a nice looking pen. I mean, I love the way it looks. I love the curve. I love the very Asian look to it. I like the way it feels. I like the way it writes with the fude nib compared to the fine nib. I may still yet pull this nib out and put in a standard medium number 5 nib just to see how I think it should write with a medium nib. But I wanted to monkey around with the fude just a little bit to see how it wrote. Because quite honestly, I'd never used one or had never written with one. So I'm going to get out the Rhodia dot pad and I'm going to see how this fude nib does for you for a writing sample. All right, here we go. Once again, the Jinhao 15 is seen right here. Now, just give you a few size comparisons for pens that you may be familiar with. A Jinhao 450. Let's go next with a TWSBI Eco. Oh, let's throw in here a Lamy Safari. I'm also going to throw in, let's move the pad up just a little bit. Here, how about a Conklin Duragraph for size comparison? For those of you familiar with a Conklin. And my ever reliable and lovable Waterman Filius. So if that gives you some idea of size comparisons for the Waterman, the Conklin, all that against the Jinhao. So the Jinhao 15, like I said, it posts a little too long, so I'm not going to post it for this. And the nib that I've got in here is not the nib that it came with, but let's see how we do. So a Jinhao 15. Now you see how wide a line this thing writes, and like I said, I think fude is actually a word that means paintbrush. And I'm not doing anything really special with it. So this is Bernanke Blue. And for those of you who are familiar with noodlers, you know that there's often some kind of message that goes along with some of the names of the inks. This one in particular, I think, was aimed at Ben Bernanke, who was chairman of the Federal Reserve at one time, and the idea was that the ink stuff is getting printed faster than the ink can dry. So you gotta appreciate Nathan and some of his political humor that comes along with it. Unlike others, I don't mind it so much. So a quick writing, it would help if my handwriting didn't suck this morning. A quick writing sample Well, like I said, this is a fude nib, so it's going to lay down a whole lot of ink as opposed to the little fine nib that it came with, which I despised. I absolutely hated the nib. So keep that in mind. If you're going to go buy a Jinhao 15, they sure look nice, they hold nice in the hand. I like the way it writes with the fude nib. If I'm going to do something a little fancier, if I'm going to write something big, but if I'm going to like do stuff in my checkbook, or I'm going to do maybe some letter writing, probably not the pen to do it, or at least not with that nib on it. So like I said, I'll probably try it out a little more with a different kind of nib. Maybe I'll also put in a medium nib if I'm going to keep it permanently in my collection. So there it is, the Jinhao 15. I said I like it, I like the shape, I like the curves, I like the way it feels, but I really despise the factory nib with which it came.